They called me lazy. They laughed at me. They dismissed my dreams before I even had the chance to speak them out loud. While they were busy talking, I was busy building a multi-million-dollar empire. This isn't just my story. It's a blueprint for anyone who has ever been underestimated. Before we continue, if you love our stories, please encourage us by hitting the like button, sharing with a friend, and subscribing for more. My name is Randy Peachwell. I am 28 years old, a former warehouse reject, and the founder of a tech empire. And on the day I was supposed to feel the safest, surrounded by my own flesh and blood, my father decided to turn my life into a punchline for the neighborhood. It happened at our annual summer barbecue. The air was thick with humidity and smelled like charcoal and marinade. The backyard was packed with friends and neighbors holding paper plates. I was standing near the cooler, gripping a cold soda, trying to blend into the fence and disappear. Then our neighbor Matthew asked the question I dreaded most. "So Victor, what is Randy up to these days?" My father didn't even hesitate. He flipped a burger, wiped sweat from his forehead, and laughed, a loud, booming sound that cut through the chatter. "Randy? Oh, don't ask about him. He is currently inventing new ways to nap. The boy is allergic to actual work." The whole patio erupted in laughter. My older brother, Adrian, smirked from across the yard, shaking his head. I felt the heat rise up my neck, hotter than the grill. I didn't say a word. I set my soda down on the fence, turned around, and walked out the side gate. That barbecue wasn't the first time, though. It was just the loudest time. My entire life had been a constant comparison game, and I was always losing. In the Peachwell house, sweat was the only thing that mattered. If you weren't suffering, you weren't working. I remember when I was 12 years old. My father asked us to clear a pile of heavy rocks from the garden to make room for a shed. Adrian, who was 14, went straight to it. He grabbed the jagged rocks with his bare hands, grunting, sweating, and hauling them one by one across the yard. It took him 3 hours of backbreaking labor. When he finished, he was covered in dirt, and my dad clapped him on the back. "Now that is a man's work," he said. I looked at the rocks and thought, there has to be a better way. I spent an hour looking for heavy-duty rope and a few sturdy pipes in the garage. I rigged up a simple pulley system anchored to the old oak tree. Once it was built, I moved my pile of rocks in 20 minutes without breaking a sweat. I thought my dad would be impressed by the leverage. Instead, he looked at my clean shirt and frowned. "You spent more time playing with ropes than working, Randy. Why do you always have to be so lazy? Just do the work like your brother." That day, I learned a dangerous lesson. In my family, efficiency looked like cheating. As I got older, that label followed me out of the house and into the workforce. I tried to be what they wanted. I really did. I applied for real jobs that required hard labor, hoping to prove my father wrong. But my brain just didn't work that way. I got a job at a local shipping warehouse. My job was to grab boxes from a conveyor belt and stack them on pallets. It was mindless, repetitive, and slow. On my third day, I noticed that the current system was flawed. If we reorganized the pallets by color code before they hit the belt, we could load the trucks twice as fast with half the walking distance. I spent my lunch break sketching a new layout on a clipboard and reorganizing just one loading bay to prove it worked. When the floor manager walked in, I smiled, expecting praise. "Look," I said, pointing to the neatly stacked bay. "I fixed the flow. We can get the trucks loaded without breaking our backs today." The manager didn't smile. He turned red. "Who told you to change my floor plan?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "We don't pay you to think, Peachwell. We pay you to lift. Put it back or get out." I was fired on the spot for insubordination. When I got home, I didn't even get to explain. Victor stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. "Fired again?" he spat. "You just can't stick anything out, can you? You need to toughen up, Randy." After the warehouse firing, I hit rock bottom. I had no money, no job, and worst of all, no dignity. I spent my days lying on the floor of my childhood bedroom, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. I felt paralyzed. It wasn't that I didn't want to do things. It was that I didn't want to do things their way. But when everyone around you tells you you're broken, you start to believe it. The word lazy looped in my head like a broken record. Maybe they're right, I thought. Maybe I am just useless. One evening, I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. It was Victor and Adrian. They were talking in the kitchen, but the walls were thin. "I don't know what to do with him, Victor," Adrian said. "He's 28. He's a dead weight. We can't keep supporting him." "I know," my father sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. "I thought he'd grow out of it, but it looks like he's going to be a burden forever. We just have to accept that Randy isn't built for this world." A burden. That word hurt more than lazy. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. I rolled over and pressed my face into the carpet, wishing I could just disappear. I was done trying to be them. I had to find a way to be me, or I wasn't going to survive. The shift happened a week later, late at night. The house was quiet, except for the sound of furious typing coming from the dining room table. I walked out to get a glass of water and saw Adrian hunched over his laptop. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was surrounded by piles of crumpled paper invoices for the family construction business. He was groaning, punching numbers into a calculator, and cursing under his breath. "What's wrong?" I asked quietly. Adrian snapped his head up. "I've been doing payroll and invoices for 10 hours, Randy. 10 hours. And I'm not even halfway done. This happens every month. It's a nightmare." I looked at the screen. He was manually typing data from the messy papers into a spreadsheet. It was a repetitive, mindless loop. My brain instantly saw the pattern. "Adrian," I whispered, staring at the screen, "you don't have to do that manually. I could write a simple program tonight that scans those papers and finishes the whole pile while you sleep." Adrian slammed his laptop shut. "Don't start with your shortcuts, Randy. This is serious business, not one of your little pulley games. Go back to sleep." He dismissed me, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel shame. I felt a spark. I realized that my laziness, my desire to avoid pain and repetition, wasn't a defect. It was a solution, and that solution was worth money. The very next morning, I took my laptop to a cheap coffee shop downtown. I bought the cheapest black coffee they had and sat in the corner for 6 hours. I didn't apply for jobs. I didn't look for manual labor. Instead, I opened a blank document and started sketching a business model that would change everything. I thought about what Adrian had said. It takes 10 hours. I thought about the warehouse manager yelling about lifting boxes. The world was full of people who hated repetitive, boring tasks. They were drowning in data entry, scheduling, and sorting. They called it hard work. I called it inefficient. I wrote one complex word at the top of the screen: LazyTech. The concept was simple: laziness as a service. I would build software bots that could do the boring, soul-sucking tasks that businesses hated, but I would sell it as a premium service. I wouldn't tell them it was a bot. I would just deliver the results faster than any human could. My hands shook as I typed. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix myself to fit the world. I was building a world that fit me. I decided right then to build it in total secrecy. If my family found out I was playing on the computer again, they would never let me hear the end of it. My new routine drove my father absolutely crazy. Victor was a man who believed the sun shouldn't catch you in bed. He woke up at 4 a.m. every single day, banging pots and pans, making sure everyone knew he was awake and suffering. To him, waking up early was a moral victory. I, on the other hand, didn't wake up until 10 a.m. I would stumble into the kitchen just as he was coming back for a lunch break. He would look at me with disgusted eyes, shaking his head. "Must be nice," he would grumble. "Sleeping your life away while the rest of us break our backs." He didn't see what happened after he left. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., I entered a state of hyperfocus. I didn't move. I didn't eat. I coded workflows and automated systems with a speed that would terrify a normal person. In 4 hours, I accomplished what took Adrian a week. But to Victor, I was just a bum in pajama pants. One afternoon, he walked in while I was letting a script run a test. I was leaning back in my chair, eyes closed, thinking. "Hopeless," he muttered loud enough for me to hear. "Absolutely hopeless." I didn't open my eyes. I just smiled. 2 months later, I was ready to launch the first version of LazyTech. I had set up a simple website offering instant data cleaning for small businesses. I felt like Steve Jobs in a garage, ready to take over the world. I pressed the live button with a trembling finger. I waited, and waited, and waited. Nothing happened. The site crashed within an hour due to a coding error I had missed. Even after I fixed it, nobody visited. A week went by, and I had exactly 0 clients. The silence was deafening. The confidence I had built up in the coffee shop began to crumble into dust. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen. The voice of my father crept back into my mind. You can't stick anything out. You're lazy. The temptation to quit was overwhelming. There was a help wanted sign at the grocery store down the street. I could just go get a job there, sweeping floors, and make the criticism stop. I almost stood up to go get an application. But then I stopped. If I quit now, I would prove them right forever. No, I whispered to the empty room. I would rather fail my way than succeed their way. I didn't quit. Instead, I analyzed why I had failed. I realized I was still trying to do too much. I was trying to solve every problem for every business. That was too much effort. I needed to be lazier. I needed to be smarter. I stripped the business down to the bone. I focused on one tiny, specific niche, automating invoice processing for plumbing and construction companies, just like the problem Adrian had. I also set up automated email templates and chatbots to handle common questions, so I wouldn't have to be on the phone constantly. Maximum output, minimum effort. I relaunched the service on a Tuesday evening, and this time, I invested my last few dollars into a targeted ad campaign on social media. I was lying on the couch, watching a movie with headphones on, trying to relax. Suddenly, my phone pinged. I looked down. A notification from my payment processor popped up. Payment received, $500. I froze. I hadn't lifted a finger. I hadn't carried a rock. I hadn't swept a floor. I was watching a movie, and I had just made more money in 2 hours than I used to make in a week at the warehouse. A second ping came through 10 minutes later. Payment received, $500. I sat up, my heart pounding against my ribs. It worked. 6 months passed. To the outside world, and especially to the Peachwell family, I was still the unemployed failure who refused to grow up. I sat in my room, I napped, and I played on my computer. They had no idea that the computer game was generating 5 figures a month. I kept my mouth shut. I opened a separate bank account that my parents couldn't see. Watching the balance grow from $1,000 to $20,000 felt like holding a secret nuclear weapon. I could have moved out right then, but I didn't just want to leave. I wanted to leave as a winner. I needed to be undeniable so they could never question me again. One night at dinner, the tension finally exploded. Victor slammed his fork down. I spoke to Matthew down at the auto shop, he announced, staring directly at me. He needs a guy to sweep the bays and wash the oil rags. I told him you'd be there Monday morning at 6 a.m. The table went silent. Adrian chewed his steak, watching me. I appreciate it, Dad, I said calmly, not looking up from my plate. But I can't take that job. I'm busy. Victor's face turned purple. Busy? Busy doing what? Sleeping. You are too good to sweep floors? You are living under my roof, eating my food, and you refuse honest work. He stood up, towering over me. You are pushing your luck, boy. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my family's doubts and executed the most dangerous phase of my business expansion, I have to ask, if you have come with us this far, it means you are really invested in Randy's journey. Please do well to like this video, share it with a friend who loves a satisfying underdog story, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a part. Also, tell us in the comments where you are listening from. We love seeing our global community. Thank you. By the time winter rolled around, LazyTech was no longer a small side project. It was an avalanche. Orders were flooding in from construction firms all over the state. They were desperate to get their paperwork done without hiring more office staff. If I were a traditional businessman, like my father, I would have panicked. I would have rented a big office and hired 20 people to manage the workload. But I knew that hiring people meant managing people, and managing people was hard work. I didn't want that. Instead, I stuck to my lazy philosophy. I hired exactly 2 people, top-tier remote experts who lived in different time zones. I bought better, more expensive software that could handle the volume automatically. My company processed thousands of invoices a day, but we had no office, no meetings, and no dress code. I sat in my bedroom, watching the numbers climb on my screen. I realized something profound that day. Being lazy didn't mean I had low ambition. It meant I had high leverage. While my dad was trading his time for money, I was making machines do the trading for me. I was building a kingdom without ever putting on a suit. The business hit a milestone that made my head spin. $50,000 in profit in a single month. I stared at the bank app on my phone, counting the zeros to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I had more cash in my liquid savings than my father had saved in 40 years of manual labor. To celebrate, I took my laptop to the city park on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was shining, and I lay on the grass, checking emails. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. It was a guy I went to high school with, wearing a mechanic's uniform covered in grease. "Randy?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Man, I haven't seen you in ages. What are you doing out here on a Tuesday? Still unemployed?" He looked at me with pity. I looked down at my laptop, where I had just approved a contract worth 10 grand. I smiled up at him, shielding my eyes from the sun. "Yeah, something like that," I said. "Just taking it easy." He chuckled and walked away to his shift. He had no idea he had just walked past a millionaire in the making. Success, however, brings sharks. A major competitor in the logistics software space noticed LazyTech eating into their market share. They were a massive company with hundreds of employees and a fancy headquarters. They decided to crush me. They lowered their prices and launched a marketing campaign claiming my automation tools were unreliable. For a moment, I panicked. The old fear gripped me. I thought, I need to work harder. I need to wake up at 4 a.m. I need to fight. I almost reverted to grind mode. I stayed up for 20 hours straight, trying to manually email clients to convince them to stay. I was miserable. I was exhausted. I was becoming my father. Then I stopped. I slapped my own face. "What are you doing?" I asked myself. "They are slow because they are big. You are fast because you are small." I didn't try to add features. I stripped the software down. In 48 hours, I released a light version that removed all the bloat and was 10 times faster than their system. My agility beat their size. I didn't have to work hard. I just had to be quick. That victory put me on the map. A few weeks later, I received an email that changed the trajectory of my life. It was from a massive conglomerate looking to modernize their back-end systems. They had seen how LazyTech dismantled the competition, and they were impressed. The subject line read, "Acquisition Inquiry." They didn't want to fight me. They wanted to buy me, or at least partner with me. I opened the attachment. It was a partnership offer that valued LazyTech in the multi-millions. It included a massive upfront payout and a consulting fee for me to teach them my efficiency methods. I read the contract 3 times. I paid an online legal firm a flat fee to review the details overnight. By the next morning, they gave the thumbs up, and I was ready. I was sitting in my bedroom, wearing flannel pajama pants and a t-shirt with a hole in the shoulder. Downstairs, I could hear my dad complaining about the price of gas. Upstairs, I was signing a digital document that would secure my financial freedom forever. While I was soaring quietly in the stratosphere, the Peachwell family was crashing down to earth. While the digital world was booming, the physical world, my father's world, was suffering. The economy had taken a bad turn, and the construction industry was hit the hardest. Contracts were drying up, but the bills kept coming. I watched my family crumble. Adrian looked like a ghost. He was burnt out, sick from stress, and suffering from chronic back pain from working 80-hour weeks. He looked 10 years older than he was. Victor wasn't doing any better. His knees were giving out, but he refused to stop working. He limped around the house, angry at the world. Then came the final blow. I found a letter from the bank on the kitchen counter. It was a foreclosure notice. The family business was underwater, and they had put the house up as collateral. They had 30 days to pay a massive sum, or we would lose everything. My father sat at the table, head in his hands, defeated. The hard work method had finally failed him. It was time for the lazy son to step in. The deadline for the bank payment was 3 days away. We held an emergency family meeting in the living room. The air was thick with despair. My mother was crying softly in the corner, and Adrian looked like he was about to pass out. Victor paced back and forth, muttering about selling his truck, his tools, anything to scrape the money together. He stopped pacing and looked at me. I was sitting on the sofa, staring intently at my phone. The sight of me on my phone, even in this crisis, made him snap. "If only everyone in this family had pulled their weight," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "If we had 3 incomes instead of 2, maybe we wouldn't be losing the house. But no, you just sit there." I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I saw the press release I had been waiting for finally go live on the screen. I stood up slowly. "I have pulled my weight, Dad," I said calmly. "I just did it differently." I held out my phone to him. A breaking news alert had just popped up on the screen from a major tech outlet. The headline was in bold black letters. Local startup LazyTech valued at multi-millions. Founder, Randy Peachwell. Victor squinted at the screen. He read it once. Then he read it again. He looked at me, then back at the phone. The room went completely silent. It was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Adrian stood up, his jaw practically hitting the floor. "Randy, is this real?" he whispered. I didn't answer Adrian with words. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a cashier's check I had just returned from the bank with guaranteed funds, ready to deposit. I placed it gently on the coffee table in front of my father. Victor looked down. His eyes widened until they looked like they might pop out of his head. The amount on the check didn't just cover the overdue debt. It was enough to pay off the entire mortgage of the house and clear all the business loans. His hands shook as he picked it up. He looked at me, his eyes wet with tears and confusion. "Where? How did you do this? You were always in your room. You were sleeping." I looked him right in the eye, finally standing tall. "I wasn't sleeping, Dad. I was building. While you were working hard to keep the business running, I was working smart to build something that could save it. I used my brain so I wouldn't have to use my back." The anger drained out of Victor's face, replaced by shock and a sudden, crushing realization. He collapsed onto the sofa, holding the check like it was a lifeline. For the first time in my life, he didn't look at me with disappointment. He looked at me with awe. Paying off the debt was just the beginning. The Peachwell construction business was still broken fundamentally. It relied too much on manual effort and outdated methods. I made them an offer. I would buy the business from them, officially, and restructure it using LazyTech systems. Victor agreed. He was too tired to fight, and the check had proven my point. I took over immediately. I didn't fire the crew. I fired the inefficiency. I installed my automated scheduling software. I used drones for site surveys instead of making Adrian walk the perimeter for hours. I outsourced the paperwork to my own algorithms. The change was instant. Within a month, the business was profitable again. But the biggest change was in Adrian. I walked into his office one Friday afternoon. "Go home, Adrian," I said. He looked at his watch. "It's only 2 p.m., Randy. I have hours of work left." "No, you don't," I smiled. "The system finished it 10 minutes ago. Your work week is 40 hours now, not 80. Go see your kids." Adrian stared at the empty, to-do list on his computer screen. He started to cry. It wasn't sad crying. It was the relief of a man who had been carrying a heavy rock for 20 years and was finally allowed to put it down. A few weeks later, I found my father sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. He wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting. For a man who couldn't sit still for 5 minutes without feeling guilty, this was a miracle. I sat down next to him with 2 sodas. We sat in silence for a long time, watching the orange light fade over the yard where I used to build my pulley systems. "I'm sorry, Randy," he said, his voice rough. He didn't look at me. "I was hard on you. I thought that if work didn't hurt, it wasn't real. I thought suffering was the only way to be a man." He took a sip of the soda. "I was wrong. You were never lazy. You were just seeing things I couldn't see." I felt a lump in my throat. I had waited 28 years to hear those words. "It's okay, Dad," I said softly. "You taught me how to endure. I just wanted to teach you that you don't always have to." "Well," he chuckled, a dry sound. "You proved that thinking is the hardest work of all. And I guess I'm the one who's been lazy about using my head." It was a clumsy apology, but it was the best he could do. And for me, it was enough. Years have passed since then. LazyTech is now a household name in the industry. I have more money than I could ever spend, but I haven't changed much. I still wake up at 10 a.m. I still refuse to do busy work. And I still love a good nap. I stood on stage at a massive tech conference last week, looking out at thousands of young entrepreneurs who were burnt out and tired. They were looking for the secret to success. "People will call you lazy," I told them into the microphone. "Let them. They don't understand that lazy is just a word for efficiency. Being lazy isn't about doing nothing. It is about refusing to do things that don't matter, so you have the energy to focus on the one thing that does." I looked at the camera at the back of the room, imagining my dad watching the live stream from his porch. "Don't work hard just to suffer," I said, closing my laptop. "Work smart so you can live." The screen faded to black, but for the first time in my life, everything was bright.
This story isn't just about a tech startup or a generational clash. It is a powerful reminder that there is no single right way to achieve success. Victor Peachwell struggled because he believed that physical suffering was the only metric of value. He judged Randy based on the appearance of work, rather than the result of work. He missed the genius in his own house because it didn't look like sweat. The lesson: never confuse activity with accomplishment. Just because someone is busy doesn't mean they are productive, and just because someone is quiet or rests doesn't mean they aren't building an empire. True innovation often looks like laziness to those who are stuck in the old ways. Embrace efficiency, question the grind, and remember, the goal of work is to build a life, not to destroy yourself in the process. Thank you so much for following Randy's journey from the lazy outcast to the savior of his family. It was an emotional ride of vindication, and we hope you felt every moment of his triumph. If you enjoyed this story and love hearing about underdogs who prove everyone wrong, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Tell us in the comments, do you think Randy was right to keep his success a secret for so long? Or should he have told his family sooner? Type Team Smart Work if you think he did the right thing by building in silence. See you in the next story.